Hello, my name is Josh. Welcome to the Tetris channel. It's another month, so let's look at all the films and TV shows that will. So the first film that I watched this month was Elemental. I think this was a film that everyone thought was gonna bomb, and then it ended up grossing a bunch in the weeks after it released. So I thought I'd give it a watch. And overall I found it to be a fun time. It's not up to the levels of many other Pixar films, but I did think the story was enjoyable enough. And I had a few laughs here and there. Not at Claude though. I hate Claude. I do think the messaging of racism is a bit too on the nose, with the characters basically saying their world's equivalent of racial slurs, and the messaging does kind of get tangled up in its own web by the end. It's also very by the books and predictable, but I feel like the animation and voice acting really makes up for it. Obviously it's not Spider-Verse levels, but the animation, especially with the fire characters, does look really good and really beautiful in scenes. Again, it's just a fun time. I give it a 7. And then I watched Tenet. If you watched last month's video, then you know I'm watching some Christopher Nolan films that are available on streaming services for Oppenheimer, and this was on Netflix, so I thought I'd give it a watch. Overall, it's probably my least favourite Nolan film that I've watched. Why is my throat so clogged? I swear to God, I need it. It's also one of his most visually creative I've seen from him as well. The concept I found to be pretty interesting, but I do think the execution was really convoluted and confusing. I also found it to be overly long, and there's just some storylines that are just stretched out so much that it just doesn't become that enjoyable anymore. Like I said though, this film is a treat for the eyes. I found the reverse concept to be really cool and interesting. I found the protagonist to be pretty likeable, as well as Robert Pattinson's character. I do think it's still a solid watch, but it's just not Nolan's best. I give it a 7. And then I finished watching My Adventures with Superman. I finally finished this show, and overall I really liked it. I didn't find the main trio of Clark, Lois and Jimmy to be all that likeable at the start, and there's a lot of back and forth between Lois and Clark that got really annoying after a while. But after Lois found out Clark's true identity, I had much more fun with the show. I thought the animation was really great, and I really did end up liking Jack Quaid's take on Superman. I just found it to be really charming and fun. It has Saturday morning cartoon feels, which I like, and I really enjoyed the finale. I'm really excited to see where they're going to take it with season 2. I'd give it a What is wrong with me? I give it 7.5. And then watch One Piece. One Piece live action. Sorry, One Piece live action. Like I said in last month's video, I haven't watched the anime because I ain't watching all that. And overall, I really enjoyed the show. I like how over the season Luffy builds this team with a bunch of unique personalities, and the villains they fight in each episode are just as unique and fun. The cinematography is surprisingly really great, with a very anime feeling to a lot of shots, which I'm pretty sure they were going for. I also enjoyed the marine subplots. I didn't really like Kobe's character for a good chunk of the season, but he did grow on me as I learned more of his intentions, and where his character went at the end was really good. I like how we also get snippets of characters' backstories through flashbacks, and I thought that worked really well and added a lot of emotional weight to episodes. My main complaint is that the characters might be just a bit too animated and close to the original source material, and it doesn't translate as well to live action. I see that especially in Luffy, who's constantly shouting and putting his hands in the air, which I know is a thing from the anime, but he does it one too many times in this show, and again it doesn't translate that well. Apart from that though, I didn't really have any other complaints. It's a really fun time that kept me engaged throughout. I give it a 9. And then I watched Are You There God? It's Me, Margaret. This is a 2023 film that I wasn't sure I was gonna like based on the poster, but this is a really fun and heartwarming watch. I thought all of the child actors were really great in this film, especially the actor who played Margaret. Obviously you got a lot of acting talent from the adult side as well. I really like Rachel McAdams as the mum, and all of her problems with her parents and that. Kathy Bates was also really great as a grandma, and she just brought a really warm and caring aspect to her character that a grandma should have. I can't really relate to a lot of things going on in this film. It's a lot of stuff about breasts growing and first periods, which was a little bit weird to watch as a male. The religion stuff was really interesting, seeing Margaret being confused about what religion to believe in, family members pushing her in all these different directions. The 70s setting was great as well, and I feel like it really embraced it with every scene, and it just made this world a little bit more lively and fun. Overall, I like where it ended, and it's just a really solid coming of age film. Give it an 8. And then watch Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. This is the Indiana Jones film that a lot of people don't like. I watched the original Indiana Jones trilogy a few months back, but I wanted to come back to this franchise since I heard decent things about Dial of Destiny. I was interested to give that a watch, so obviously I had to watch this film first, and I didn't actually mind it that much. I really didn't. The CGI is pretty bad, and there are some pretty stupid moments that many people have pointed out, such as the fridge scene, and Shia LaBeouf swinging with the monkeys. But this was a really fun time, I think, and it just had a lot of Spielberg charm. Obviously, Harrison Ford just really steals the show as Indy again, and although the alien thing is pretty out there and feels really out of place for an Indiana Jones film, it's done well enough to where, again, I can have a fun time with it. It did have a pretty underwhelming conclusion, and I am just a bit up and down on this film, but I didn't think it was bad by any means. I give it a 6.5. And then I had to watch the banger that is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse again. I recently brought this film on 4K right here, and it's still a 10 out of 10, 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 a 10 out of 10. And then I finally got to Barbie. It's almost been 2 months, but I finally got to it, and I think it's definitely a top 5 for the year for me. I really love the style of Barbie Land and how unique it feels. Everything about this film is just so fun and charming. Greta Gerwig just knows how to pull off a film like this. The commentary on gender equality was done really cleverly and didn't feel like it was like shoving it in your face. Obviously, Margot Robbie is great as Barbie, and it's amazing seeing Ryan Gosling play such a comedic and unserious character. There are some really surprising moments of emotion that are sprinkled throughout this film that are implemented really well and has a lot of weight to a film based on inanimate toys. I just really love it. I give it a 9. And then I finished watching season 1 of Demon Slayer. I wanted to watch this since people were saying it's one of like the best animes of all time, and the only other anime that I've watched is My Hero Academia, so I was interested to check this out. And it was a very, very solid season. I found Tanjiro to be a really likeable character, and I like the determination he has after experiencing a tragedy. The lore building in the show is really great, and it reveals things in really creative ways, especially with the animation. It just looks visually amazing, and there's not really one shot that looks bad or out of place in this season. I really like the implementation of 3D, and just brings the world to life even more. I do think this season is dragged out a bit too much though, especially for a first season, and there's just some story arcs in this season that felt really irrelevant and just boring. But when the show hits, it really hits, and just leads to some really standout moments of television. I give it an 8.5. And then I watched Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm not gonna lie, I think it's my least favourite of the franchise. I feel like the Spielberg charm of the last 4 films is just missing in this film, and I feel like it's constantly trying to recapture that magic, and it just doesn't work in my opinion. You also have a pretty long, deep-faked flashback sequence with a really uncanny, deep-faked Harrison Ford's de-aging face thingy that really took me out of the scene a lot, especially when 80-year-old Harrison Ford was speaking as like a 40-year-old Indy. It just didn't work. I do like the whole old Indiana Jones aspect to this film though, and I think it tackles that pretty well, and I do think it gives us a pretty satisfying end to the franchise. I also found the aspect of the doll to be pretty interesting as well, and where they go with it in the third act is pretty fun. I did find the villain to be a bit one note though, even though he's played by Mads Mikkelsen, who I think is a really great actor, but I just don't think it worked, and it did really drag in the middle half of the film. I think overall it was a very decent conclusion to the franchise though. I give it a 6. And then I watched Tetris. This is another 2023 film that I heard good things about, and overall it was a pretty enjoyable time. Taron Egerton did a really good job in this film as a very likeable businessman who will go to hell and back Soviet Russia to make this game a success. I expected the stuff with Soviet Russia to be like a subplot, but as the film went on, it kind of took over the film and became more of a thriller than a biopic. I like the whole business aspect to the film and all the interesting stuff about the game Tetris, and I thought the film was going to be more like Air, but it just wasn't. There's basically a Bond villain in this film who wants to ruin the distribution of Tetris, and he's just comically evil. But this film did keep me entertained for a good majority of it, and it was pretty well written. It did come to a satisfying conclusion, even if it wasn't exactly how it happened in reality. I give it a 7.5. And then I watched Evil Dead 2013. I do need to go back and watch the original Evil Dead trilogy, as well as Ash vs. the Evil Dead, because I've heard great things about those, but I feel like that's in its own separate part of the Evil Dead universe with Ash, and then you've got this part of the Evil Dead universe, and this one was on Netflix, so I gave it a watch because I want to watch Evil Dead Rise as well. So yeah, this was a really fun time, which might be a weird thing to say with a film as like over the top gory as this and tense. It really just feels like something I've never seen in a film before, but everything from the visuals to the practical effects was so great. I do feel like the characters were written to have no likeable qualities, so it didn't really matter when they got killed off or possessed, but I would have liked this film to maybe delve into the characters' backstories a little bit more, so I did feel something a little bit more when they got possessed or killed. Obviously the woman protagonist was someone to really root for in this this film, and it pulls a really great twist during the final act that really switched things up and led to a really great performance from her. Overall, I just really loved this. I don't really have anything else to say. I can't really think of anything else to say. I just really loved it. Really great horror film. I give it an 8.5. And then I watched Evil Dead Rise, like I said, and I love this one even more than the last film. The cinematography is great, and I really do feel like they're trying to pay homage to Sam Raimi with the camera effects. The atmosphere built in this high-rise building is great, and there's just this lingering feeling that you like can't escape this building. And whereas the 2013 film has like one possession after another, this one just keeps building and building with one person getting possessed, another person getting possessed, and these people not being able to kill them, and it just makes some really unsettling imagery. The practical effects in this film might even top the first, with how absolutely crazy they go with everything at the end. It's such a creative, well-made film. Again, I don't really have much else to say about the film. Like, yeah, it has the guy from One Piece in it. I'll give it a 9. And then watch Extraction. This is a film that grew on me slowly as I watched it. I expected it to be a really boring, slow slog of an action movie like Wrath of Man, which I really don't like, and it wasn't. First of all, I feel like there's a lot of attention brought to the colour grading in this film. There's a lot of warm colours and really nice colours for an action film. I don't know. I know I shouldn't keep comparing it to Wrath of Man, but Wrath of Man was almost black and white. It was so grey and boring, but there's just a lot of attention brought to the colour grading and lighting of this film. I do think they took some pretty big risks in this film as well that did keep me on my toes and made me think that anyone could die in this film. The thing that everyone talks about when it comes to this film is the one taker, where it just keeps going and going, and I think it is done perfectly and does elevate this film a lot. The camera movements and everything is amazing, and it's definitely a highlight of the film. Everything else I did find to be a bit generic though. The villain I found to be a bit one note and forgettable, and where the story went wasn't that interesting. It's just not the best action film that I've watched, but it does have some great performances and some really standout moments. I give it 6.5. And then I watched Talk to Me. This is a film that I was really interested to check out. A lot of people were talking about it because it was directed by two YouTubers, Raka, and it was a really good horror film. It's just one of the most unique and truly disturbing films I've seen in the past few years, I think. This film is just so well written, and it builds up the main character to be really likeable, with her going through an extremely painful time emotionally, losing someone really close to her, and then this supernatural aspect comes into it, and then it ruins her life even more. I like how the film eases the viewer in with this supernatural aspect before taking such a visceral and like shocking turn. From there, it just lingers on this feeling of dread that gives me the same feelings of like an Ari Aster film, and the ending was done so well and just makes me so excited for what these directors can do next, along with the Australian actors who I think did a really great job as well. I give this film a 9. And then watch Blue Batty, and then watch Blue Beetle. This is the DCU or the DCEU's latest film, and it was a fun time. I did feel like it copied from like a million other superhero films, but it did it pretty well. I like how it's deeply rooted in Latino culture, and that culture really shines through in this film. I do think the guy who plays Jaime did a really good job, and all the stuff in the Blue Beetle suit is really fun. There were some really vibrant and nice looking action scenes as well, some that really go hard, especially in the third act with that Cypress Hill song in the back. There was a big plot hole in this film though that just showed a lot of emotion that this film was trying to get at. Jaime makes it clear multiple times in this film that he's not a killer, and it's like a main theme that runs throughout this film. So why is the rest of his family literally slaughtering people, okay, in the final act? It just bugged me so much, because if Jaime killed who he should have killed in the first half of the film, then he wouldn't have put his family in such extreme danger. It really bugged me. Apart from that though, again, it's a fun time. Oh, it's a bit cheesy like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. It has a big company that creates weapons like Iron Man, and it has a fun enough finale that borrows from other various films. I give it a 7. And then watch The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar Lumps. I was really excited for this because it's obviously Wes Anderson. I really love Wes Anderson, and also I was really into Roald Dahl a few years back, and actually read this story in a book of Roald Dahl short stories in here. So I was really excited to see how Anderson would adapt this story, and he adapted it in the most Anderson way possible. Again, it's a story within a story, with Roald Dahl kind of narrating this thing through all of these characters. It felt kind of like a stage production a lot of the time, which I really like, with a bunch of moving sets and really creative backgrounds. I just really like how it's done, and I'm pretty sure it's a word for word copy of Dahl's original story, which just shows the passion that Anderson has for this author. Similar to Fantastic Mr. Fox, arcs. It's not feature length, it's only 40 minutes, but it has some great performances, and it's just a really intriguing time. I'd give it an 8.5. And then I watched The Ratcatcher. Again, this is another one from Anderson that adapted a Roald Dahl story. This one's a bit shorter, it's 20 minutes, and this one was pretty fun. I think the story being told is really great, and there's some great performances again. I don't really have much else to say. I'd give it like an 8. And then watch The Swan. This was also included in here. If you can see right here, it is on here somewhere. I also read this story a few years back, and it's like a really emotional and really dark Roald Dahl story, I think. But Anderson manages to visualize the story really well, with so many amazing and impressive moving sets. They're just beautiful to look at. You've also got some stop motion moments in it as well. It's just great. It's just great. I give it an 8.5. And then the last one I watched was Poison. I think this is the least favourite out of the Anderson Netflix things. I don't think the story adapts as well as the others, and the ending is pretty anticlimactic. But Benedict Cumberbatch is pretty fun in this though. I give it a 7. And then the last thing I watched this month was Extraction 2. It's alright, but I feel the same way that I did with the first, where the story is just really forgettable and generic, but the action and choreography is absolutely phenomenal and makes for some really memorable moments. I do think this film's one take scene actually tops the first in my opinion. I think it went on longer than the first, which may contribute to it, but it's just so amazing and well done. Again though, I didn't really care for the rest of the film. Chris Hemsworth is pretty good, and they really underused Idris Elba, which is kind of annoying. I give it a 7. So those are all the films and TV shows I watched in the month of September. I'm currently watching Futurama season 1. I watched like the first 3 episodes of this like a few years back, and then I just didn't decide to watch any more of it for some reason, but I've finally come round and got back to it, and I just absolutely love it. The humour is just really clever and really well done a lot of the time, and it reminds me a lot of like classic Simpsons. Obviously it's from the same writers, and the characters are just so iconic and memorable. I think I'm only going to watch the first 5 seasons because it got cancelled after that, and then when it got renewed, apparently it wasn't as good. It actually returned again this year, and I've heard even worse things about it. So yeah, I'm also watching Gen V. I watched the first 3 episodes of this on the first day it came out, Friday, because I really love The Boys, and this is a really good spin-off so far. It really feels like a teen drama set in the Boys universe, with a whole bunch of corruption and a whole bunch of covering up stuff, which I come to expect from a show like this. Obviously it's extreme in almost every way possible, which I've also come to expect from a boys show. And then I'm also watching Ahsoka. I'm still watching this, and I find it boring. There are some standout lightsaber fights, and I like David Tennant as the robot, but again, I can't be asked to watch Rebels, and I feel like I don't understand half of what's going on here because of that, and I don't think that should be the case. So yeah, if you like this video, please leave a like. If you didn't,